because in the past, when I've had some time to think about it, my mind goes crazy, and I start thinking about a bunch of good stuff I'm going to say when I get up here. When I get up here, I just freeze. Can't come up with any of it. But in my own head, it sounds really good. I just want to take a deep breath and kind of get some nerves to go away. Harold P. always told me that and it don't matter how long you've been sober, if you get behind a podium and you ain't nervous, something's wrong. You know, I find that to be true. I want to read something. I read daily reflections about every day, and sometimes it sticks out to me a little more than others. And today it really did seem to stick out to me, and so I felt fit to read it. It says, "A new life. Yes, there is a substitute, and it is vastly more than that. There's a fellowship in Alcoholics Anonymous. Life will mean something at last." Alcoholics Anonymous, page 152. Life is better without alcohol. AA in the presence of a higher power keeps me sober, but the grace of God does even better. It brings service into my life. Contact with the AA program teaches me a new and greater understanding of what Alcoholics Anonymous is and what it does. But most importantly, it helps to show me who I am, an alcoholic who needs the constant experience of the Alcoholics Anonymous program so that I may live a life given to me by my higher power. So yeah, but I was a damn crack pipe on payday in here, I tell you. And I forget I'm being recorded, so I gotta watch what I say. But my name is Blake, and I am an alcoholic. And really, I like anything that gets me outside of feeling myself. My sobriety date is July 17th, 2017. And this is my home group, Keeping It Sober group, on Tuesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Usually we have power for any visitors that may be in here. Try to keep service commitments in this home group. I have a sponsor who also has a sponsor. And I've worked with 12 steps with Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's drastically changed my life since doing so. I'm here to share some experience, strength, and hope, and hopefully I can be of service to the next man and somebody can get something out of this. Because for me, man, I sat in these rooms for a long time and I was never able to identify with anybody. I really wasn't open-minded enough, and I've never had any DUIs, I've never been to prison, I've never did a lot of things that I hear in this program. But the ending result of my alcoholism led me right here, and I can identify with a lot of people overall, you know. A lot of the same stuff I hear over and over. Just for me, it's just fear, man. I shared about it last night. I'd be lying my ass off if I didn't care what you thought about me right now. You know, like that's just the truth. Just fear of everything. I started drinking when I was young. I don't know about anybody else in here, but I love to drink. I love to drink. I love to put needles in my arm and pipes in my mouth. That's what I do. And that's what gets me feeling good. That's just the truth. It's what gets me outside of feeling the moment, outside of feeling reality. And the book talks about it like, dude, I get rocketed into the fourth dimension and I get drunk, you know. Like that's just the way I experienced it. Like I probably had my first spiritual awakening when I was 12 years old and had a bottle of Everclear presented to me. When I was about 11 or 12. Let's start from the beginning. I grew up in a place called Charleston, South Carolina. It's a beautiful place. A lot of historical homes, a lot of beaches, really prestigious golf courses. And I didn't really grow up near any of that shit. You know, like my childhood was spent on the beach. My grandmother still lives on a place called Folly Beach. She's been there about 70 years, maybe a little longer than that, and I love it out there, man. I love running the streets, skipping school. My mother called me the other morning. It was actually on 9/11, and she said, "Do you remember where you were 17 years ago?" I said, "Yeah, skipped school and I was hanging out in the surf shop, and we were watching surf videos, and they had a couple TVs in there, and it popped up, and I'll never forget it, just like I'm sure most of us won't." But it was just the beach lifestyle, typical, you know, just running the streets, man. I loved it. I had an older sister that was 4 years older than me, and growing up, we had everything, man. Like, my parents were not well off by any means, but they provided everything I wanted, and my mom could probably give me everything I needed, my mom could probably give me everything I wanted, but my dad would be the roadblock in that one. And just, my sister was 4 years older, and I always looked up to her and her friends. I was always seeking approval from that older age group. Do whatever they'd ask me to do. You know what I'm saying? Just wanted to hang out with them. I wanted to be a part of. I've been 6 foot since the 5th grade practically, so it's like I was always kind of a standout. They called me Dumbo because my ears were big, and you know, I had a lot of these things. But I was never really an outcast. The only thing I was an outcast was I drank unlike other people. I remember my sister. I was probably 11 or 12, and I had been introduced to alcohol by this point. And, let me slow down. I'm nervous as hell, y'all. My parents got a divorce when I was probably 8 or 9, and shortly after that, my mother got into another relationship with a guy, and I thought he was the man, you know, like he was 10 years younger than her, and he was real fit. He was my basketball coach. That's how they met. And turns out he's one of us, and I don't have to call him that. He calls himself that. And he took my mom down some deep, dark roads for a number of years. And around the same time, my father got sick and passed away, and I was 11 years old when all this took place, and the discipline went out the window. You know, like I had nobody really looking over me, nobody holding me accountable for what I did. On the weekends, my mother and my stepfather would be locked up in the room doing their thing. And my sister would be throwing parties, and her friends would be handing me Jello shots and shots of tequila, and I was loving it. I loved the drink. You know, like I loved the feeling that it gave me. I never drank for the taste, trust me. And I remember my sister came home. I don't recall if I woke up one morning, and I don't recall whether or not when I walked outside, whether she was still in the car passed out. I was probably 13, and she may have been, 17. She had just started driving. And I just remember going out there, and I was with her, and it was early one morning, and there was red throw up all over the car. And, I was like, man, what'd you do last night, you know? She said, well, I drank a bunch of Yingling. I said, well, I'm gonna make sure to stay away from that shit. You know, like, I don't want to be throwing up red stuff everywhere. Like, I didn't know where that really came from, but turns out I didn't. Going through high school, especially 9th and 10th grade, my mother and my stepfather were still. He was in and out on post release and in and out of prison, and my mother would straighten up, and she would get evicted. And there was a period of time where we were living in the good old in-town suites. Y'all got those in Moore County? You know what I'm talking about? It's a rough area, you know? And I would jump around from my grandmother and my uncle's house because, truth be told, I didn't want to stay in a damn hotel. They were content with it, but I wanted my friends to like me, you know, because I thought where my living conditions were, they weren't gonna approve of me doing that. And my mother, she after, I think he went back to prison for a little bit, and she dropped everything, straightened up, got her another house, got her car payments caught back up, and tried to put some discipline in me by this point. I was 15, 16 years old by this point, and I wasn't hearing none of it. Like I'd been introduced to this lack of discipline lifestyle, and I rolled with it. And she would tell me, she'd say, just by my behavior and my actions, she said, you're just like him, talking about my stepfather. And I remember a number of years afterwards, up until just a few years ago, really, I guess really up until I got sober, she would take a lot of blame on herself. She would say, if you weren't raised in these conditions, you wouldn't have turned out like this. And I'd be like, you're damn right. you know. I'd put it back on her. I wanted to take the heat off of me. You're damn right. If you provided me everything that I needed in a comfortable living situation growing up, I wouldn't be like this, Mom. And man, that probably breaks her heart today. It really does. Luckily, I've been able to reestablish and remend that relationship that my mother and I have. And she's a good woman. She does everything that I ask her to do. Well, yeah, I'll get to that in a minute. But going through high school, I loved to drink. That's what I did. I smoked a little weed on the weekend or throughout the days. And my friends, they were introduced to other things and other substances, and I was better than them because I wasn't doing that stuff. You know, I was not about to get caught up in that stuff. I'd seen what it done to my stepfather, and I'd seen what other people had experienced with other substances, and I, I think I was probably 18 years old. I was drunk, doing something, and some things got introduced to me, and I was like, well, yeah, let's try it. It was the first time I had tried another substance besides alcohol and marijuana, and shortly thereafterwards, that's what I got into, and I never quit drinking, but it was always other things involved. I'll let you use your imagination for the most part on that. And I couldn't. Oh man, we had such a good time. Like just looking back, thinking back on it now. Like when I got out of high school, I'd always been told that it's probably the worst thing for an alcoholic, but I'd always been told I had a lot of potential, and why didn't you enroll in school, in college? I don't know. I'll tell you about my graduation. Shit, when this was just a typical day of my life. I made it to graduation rehearsal about 8 a.m. one morning, and graduation was about 4 o'clock, and that took about an hour that morning. And then after I got out of rehearsal, I decided to go out on the boat, drink some beers with my friends, and so that's what I did. And we got out in the water, and we got out in the creeks, and the damn boat broke down. We were in the middle of nowhere, and finally, we got somebody to tow us in, and I was already running late, and I had my gown in my truck, and long story short, I walked into graduation ceremony in the middle of a coliseum wearing flip-flops with a gown over a white t-shirt, and I had a bunch of family there, and I was just mad. I was drunk as hell, and still, I don't know how I graduated high school. Shortly after high school, I was involved in other things, and I was keeping a job. I was living on my own. Things weren't that bad. I hear it a lot, it was fun, and then fun with problems, and then just problems. At this point, it was probably fun with problems. I had never tried to quit drinking by this time. I never tried to stop. And I didn't know how hard it would be. I didn't think I had a problem. And I remember just rewinding just a bit more. I had some anger issues throughout my teens, and I was probably 15 or 16. I just had my license or my permit or something, and I had to go in front of a judge for some reason or another. I don't recall this particular reason, and he suggested that I go to some anger management courses and some drug and alcohol counseling classes. Not Alcoholics Anonymous, but drug and alcohol counseling, and where they would drug test you and things like that. And I was so damn mad when I left that place because something was going to get in between me and what I love to do. And my mom was with me, and I drove her car on the way back home from leaving the courthouse. And I remember we were on top of a big bridge, and I put that car up to over 100 miles an hour with her in the passenger seat, and I was so mad. I told her, I said, I might as well just throw this thing sideways and take it off the bridge. I was 15 or 16 years old. I was that mad that something had gotten in the way of my drinking. And I got home, and about 20 minutes later, the damn cops and the ambulance showed up. I'm like, what the hell are they doing here, And they're like, you can either go in that car or that car. Which one's it going to be, And so they had me admitted. And I mean, it just my thoughts were, it was the insanity of my drinking and my alcoholism, just my thought process in itself. And so out of high school, like I kind of went out on my own, and I didn't leave Charleston, but I felt like having my own place and a little job and a little bit of money in my pocket, that was going to define the person that I was. And I had a nice place, man. A little place on the beach. Me and my cousin living together, throwing parties and doing what we did. And I was probably there for 2 months. I couldn't keep it. And it was just the nature of the beast, man. So there was a big turning point, which, looking back on it now, for me, was when I was 20 years old. Me and one of my best friends, we were dibbling and dabbling some other things by this point, and we took a trip to South Florida, because I could get some stuff for a lot cheaper than it would cost us around there, and I was going to, be the next, kingpin or whatever I thought at the time, and it didn't turn out well, and he ended up dying on that trip down there, and I took a lot of blame and a lot of guilt for that, and I harbored that for a long time, for a very long time. I had a lot of people that were friends of mine that would blame me for it, and because it was me and him, and other people didn't know the circumstances. He died as a direct result of alcoholism. He died on overdose. And I'd come back, and I remember showing up to his funeral drunk as hell. But yet I was resentful at his mom for not letting me be a pallbearer. I don't know why, but I was like mad as hell. I was mad at her. This is like one of my best friends growing up. Like when my mom was struggling, I'd go over there and stay a few weeks with him. Like she brought me in, and all this would happen. And really the only reason people would still come around me is because I had some things they wanted. And but otherwise nobody, nobody really messed with me too much after that. And I drank at it and drugged at it for a long time. And I got introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous around that same time period. I went through my first treatment center. I was 21 years old, I believe. And I called my mom. Well, I was there for 30 days and 40 days, and I was in the middle of nowhere in South Carolina, and I hated that damn place. I had to go get a job at Sonic. It was quite a humiliating process as far as I'm concerned. And I called my mom after being there, I guess about 40 days, and told her that I was cured and I needed to come home, It worked for me. I hadn't picked up a drink or a drug in 40 days, like, come get me, And I remember just a couple days before leaving that place, there was a guy that left, and he left. When he left the next day, the treatment center got a phone call saying that he had died, from picking up, and I'm thinking to myself, like, why the hell would he do that? Like, what? Why would he use when he left here? Like, it didn't make any sense to me. Like, you had all the tools you needed you had a little bit of clean time under your belt, and you're just gonna go die? Like you're gonna go pick up a drink or a drug and you ain't gonna make it? Like, I did not understand it. My mom called me, and or when I called my mom, she came and got me, and I went back home. Needless to say, I was in the hospital that same night from the same thing. I mean, I wasn't lying when I said I was never going to drink again. I was never going to drug again. Like, I really believed it. I really believed that this was, in the past for me, and that I wasn't ever going to pick up again. Sure enough, man, I had a close call that night. The damn fire department had to break a window to get in my house. And that started off on another tangent, and there was, I was living with a girlfriend of mine, and God bless her, I put her through it, and she's seen a lot of deep, dark stuff with having to deal with me, and I remember we were living in an apartment, and there was a guy I was, doing a little side work, I guess you could call it, and I mean, damn, I had people in and out of my apartment all the time, I might as well had a damn open house real estate sign out there, like it was bad. And there was a fella that lived in the area, and he came up and he was like, "What's going on?" Asking me about some stuff. And I said, "Yeah." So he called me later that night, and sure enough, I'm outside, so I walked outside and he pulled a gun on me and took my stuff, and I was like, "Yeah, okay." And I texted him and told him he's a dumbass because he could have called me for 10 times the amount and he could have stole that from me, and I probably shouldn't have done that. So about a month later, he calls me. He said, "Listen, man, I'm sorry, I owe you a few $100. He said, I'd like to pay you some money." He said, "Why don't you meet me at this place?" And I remember it was around the first of the month because I was just about to go pay rent, and I had, like $800 rent laying on the bed, and maybe a few more dollars laying on the bed, and I was like, "Shit, you gonna pay me some money?" "Sure, I'll be right there." So I ran out the house, went to go meet this dude. This dude pretty much probably watched me walk out the house, and he went up in my house and stole everything. And that's just the insanity, like that's how crazy my mind was, man. That's just the way my mind worked. And so what did I do? I called the damn cops on him. And I told the cop, I said, "Oh, sold this dude some drugs, and he robbed me." Like that's just how screwed up my mind was, man. And the cop took one look at me and he said, "So we're gonna do one or two things." He said, "I'm gonna walk out of here like you never told me any of this shit, or we're gonna go ahead and file a police report." And I said, "Yeah, you got a good point. You got a good point." And I mean, man, as drunk as I was all the time, like that's how my mind worked. I really just didn't understand that. And I was in and out of meetings. There was a really good friend of mine who had gotten sober. This dude drank just like I did, and he was, bottom of the barrel, should have been in a ditch drunk like me, He had gotten sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. And matter of fact, y'all have the chance to hear him the first week in October. I remember I wanted what he had, I didn't really know how to get it. He got a car, he had his license back, and I wanted a couple of those things. So he helped me out, he took me to my first detox, matter of fact. He's the one that took me. And I remember sitting up in that detox for about 48 hours, and then I weaseled my way into the nurse's station, picked up the phone, and called the dope man to come pick me up. And sure enough, my damn mom showed up. Like, he had called my mom and told her, "Hey, he's trying to get out of detox, he's leaving." And I remember walking outside and seeing her, and she was just so disgusted, And so that would, I didn't get much out of that. I was in and out of meetings, and then I've been in and out of jail at this point, a couple weeks here, whatever. And I remember going back to jail. I sat in jail for 6 or 8 weeks or something, and man, I'd had enough. And at least I thought. And my buddy that I was just talking about, during the whole time I was there, the girl I was with, she never come and saw me. My mom never come and saw me. Nobody would answer my phone call. And my buddy that I was with, he showed up to visit me in jail. And he didn't show up as a really good childhood friend. He showed up as a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And, he never gave up on me. Never did. I get that today. But I didn't really understand it. And he wasn't going to put any money on my books. He was just coming there to talk, And, so I went to court, and I stood in front of a judge, and sure enough, my damn mom's on the other side of that room, and I said, she's getting me out of this one, you know? My mom stood in front of that judge, and she told that judge, she said, the judge asked her if she had anything she wanted to say. She stood up and she said, I don't care what you do with him, but I hope you send him far away from here as possible. And, you know, I want a no contact order on my home. You know, because at this point my mother had video surveillance tied up through the house and outside of the home. It was bad, you know. If it was bolted down, I was stealing it, you know. So that's what the judge did. He sent me actually South Carolina Department of Mental Health, and I spent a few weeks there. And they sent me to a recovery living environment in Charlotte, and altogether, notice I say altogether, I spent about 18 months there. And they gave me all the tools that I needed. I'd probably sat through the 18 months I was there. Probably sat through several hundred meetings, you know, 2 a day here and there. And I'd have a guy come up to me and, you know, ask me if I was sponsoring. I'd say no. And he said, well, now you do. And you know, he'd get in the book with me, and I didn't understand any of it. And a couple months would go by, and I'd drink again. And you know, what Cole was reading, there's a sentence that sticks out to me in there, like, those who do not completely give themselves to the simple program. Like that was me. You know, those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to the simple program. And that was just me to the T. Like the tools were laid out for me. I had every opportunity that other people around me that were getting sober had. And I just wasn't willing to do it. And I'd get drunk, and when I was living in this recovery environment, home situation that I was living in Charlotte, they'd send me to detox and let me come back, and send me to detox and let me come back, and get to a point where I'd have to go stay in the damn homeless shelter in downtown Charlotte, which isn't fun, and because I didn't have anything. And during this time period, like really, money and a good job and a car, like that was going to fix my problems, you know, like so I thought. And I can't tell you that. I mean, it still baffles me to this day how it worked out. I went to detox, and so I lost the job that I had at the time, since I was in detox for a week. And I got out of detox, and another job opportunity was presented to me. And then a few short years, I worked my way up in this company and got everything that I thought was going to make me happy. Making, you know, some decent money, and I bought a new car, and I had a house. And I was doing pretty good, and I wasn't drinking. Things looked real good on the outside, you know. I remember I went out with the guys from work one afternoon, and they asked me if I wanted to go to Buffalo Wild Wings or Wild Wing Cafe, whatever it is. I said, well, sure. I go and eat some wings, and they buy a round of beers, and I said, no, I don't mess with that stuff, you know. And they thought I was crazy, you know. By this point, I had moved out of that recovery home, and I knew I'm sitting there and I'm seeing these guys take those drinks with impunity, you know. And I didn't drink. And just a couple weeks later, I had the same invitation. And I've been introduced to the book by Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm going to find out if I'm an alcoholic. And so I tried a few drinks. And I went home, and I went to sleep. And I didn't drink for a few more days. So, shit, I'm not an alcoholic. And then following that sentence, it says, try it more than once. The next time we went out, about a week later, and needless to say, I had shut the bar down. All those guys were gone. You know, they left and went back to their families, and I was still there buying rounds for the bar, and because I'm not selfish or anything, shit. And I'm there buying rounds for the bar, shutting it down. I do the same thing the next night, and I can't wait to get off work so I can go drink and do what I do. You know, like exactly what the book tells me. That was me. I tried it more than once. You know. Yeah, I think I qualify to be. I was talking to Frank about this a couple weeks ago. He said something in a meeting one night, and I figured I'd call him one day and ask him about it because, I thought that I'd have to, I thought that I was going to have to be homeless or something to be a part of this fellowship. And Frank said, my last run wasn't the worst, but until I accepted that I was going to die from this, that's when the last time I took a drink. And he said that, and I called him and I said, Frank, like on the outside, it wasn't that bad for me. Like I hadn't lost everything like I had in the past. And, it was about a 6-month run. It wasn't something that was, I didn't have any hospital visits or anything like that. Like I thought I was kind of managing it. But when he said that, like, the reason I reached out for help this time is because I did know I was going to die if I kept drinking. And that's just the truth. And so I reached out for help, and one of the supervisors of the company I worked for, I took a few days off. Remember, it was July 4th, 2017. I was supposed to work that day. And I volunteered to work that day the week before because nobody else could really do it. And I called in and called out the next day because I was drinking in my bed alone, Netflix, drinking, wake up, drink for a few days in a row, and I knew this wasn't going to get any better. And so I walked into work and I went and sat with my supervisor at the time. He was ex-Marine, just a badass. You know what I'm saying? Like, this dude's gonna call me some names and tell me to get out of his office. And I went to his office and I had tissues in my pocket because I know it wasn't gonna go over well. And I just broke down to him and told him everything and said, I need help, And he said, Blake, my brother's a doctor that lives in California and he's been in the program for over 20 years. I get it, And so we sat there and we looked at we called the EAP and the Employee Assistance Program, and looked up some avenues through my insurance plan, and because I have these things, it's crazy. I still don't understand it. And we found a place around here. So like I said, I'm not from Moore County. I don't golf. I don't know anything about Moore County. Like, if I'm being completely honest, I probably could not point this place out on the map. That's just the truth. And so we looked up some places, and I wanted to make sure it's only a 30-day program. Like, I don't want to go somewhere for long term. And I was putting stipulations on it, and it dwindled down to a place nearby. And I called a fella and he said, well, check in a detox and call me when you get there, and pretty much hung up the phone on me. And I'm like, what an asshole. I don't want to go there. And but that's what I did. I checked into the detox, and when I got out of detox, I had some people come pick me up, and they took me to a safe place to stay until my bed date was available. And I was really just shown some love that I had never been shown before, like some people that actually cared. And I was coming to meetings. I remember I was sitting about right there, maybe where Alex is sitting right there. And on a Monday night, it was the first meeting I'd ever been to. It was a men's meeting. And old Scotty walked up to me and shook my hand, introduced himself. I'll never forget it. I was still a little foggy in the head. I probably looked like I do tonight walking into my first meeting because I was that important. Like, that's just the way my mind told me I was. Like, I was on point. Like it was sick, man. It was sick. And I went to treatment, and a fella asked me when I got to treatment. He said, "Well," he was asking me some personal questions, asking me. How much money did you make the year before, and this and that, and so what you got, how you gonna pay for this? And I slapped down my insurance card and said, we don't accept insurance here. And he said, "Where are you coming from?" I said, "I'm coming from Charlotte." He said, "We don't accept patients in Mecklenburg County." And I kind of seen some things working in my favor by this point. I didn't understand what it was. Today I do. He said, "Well, if you ain't got insurance, you're gonna pay up front." And I said, "Well," he said, "How much money you got?" And I think I had like $30 on me. And he said, "Well, what in the hell happened to all that money you told me you made last year?" And he made me feel about that, It's like, damn, he's right. Maybe some things were unmanageable in my life. And really, I got in that treatment center and I took suggestions from the guys that have been there before me, and I just, I tried to grasp it as much as I can. I tried to get everything out of it that I could. And by this time, I had been introduced to a God of my understanding. And when I was in that safe place where I was staying before treatment, I remember being there about 2 or 3 days and that mental obsession, just coming out of detox, like, damn, I want to go get a drink, like I really want to drink. And I called my buddy back home that's in the program, and he said, "Blake, you've been in and out of the program for a number of years now. Have you ever tried hitting your knees and praying and asking for help?" He said, "You don't gotta know what you're praying to and what it is." I said, "No." And sure enough, that's what I did in that house, and I haven't seen the need to take a drink since then, and I haven't missed doing that since then. And so that's what I continue to do through treatment, and it got time for me to leave treatment. Well, about halfway through the treatment center, like, I'm going to treatment, I'm going back to work and pay some bills off and get back in the middle of work. And something told me, like, when you do this your way, it ain't gonna work out, I believe that today, and it was kind of that God consciousness, that lives within me, just kind of telling me, like, you should probably take suggestions that the guys have given you. And I'm not saying this to, I'm really saying this to tell you what I had to do to stay sober. So I made the decision, and I resigned from my job, and I turned the new car back into the bank, and I moved all the stuff out of my house, and I moved into a recovery home here in Moore County. And I'm so grateful that I made that decision. It gives me an accountability. I got a sponsor when I got out of there, and done something with him I've never done. Started working with 12 Steps Alcoholics Anonymous to find out who Blake really is. Getting into some step work, it was a process. He was there every Sunday morning to read with me, though, every Sunday morning. And for the first time in my life, the things that I were going to the grave with, that I didn't want anybody to know, some things that I had seen as a young child, and some things that nobody was going to find out about me, I was able to get that stuff off my chest. These were the things that really, on a daily basis when I was drinking, like, they would come up in my mind, like, oh, I can't believe, you know what I'm saying? Like, these were those type of things. And I was able to share about it with another man. And I don't really think about them anymore. It says how it works, that's just my experience. I had some weight lifted off of me. And if it wasn't for the suggestions taken from my sponsor, it was, I don't know if I'd still be here, so I'm very grateful for him. There was a time at the beginning of the year where I was able to leave and go to another town for a few months, and I'll be honest, the first time I was asked to speak there. It's overseas, and I thought I did a flawless job, and really the truth of the matter is I went in there, I didn't know any of those people, I didn't give a damn what they thought about me, and I just said a bunch of shit that I've heard and hear, and that's just the truth, like, that's what I did, and I walked away from there, like, I brought some American AA to this country, but today I know I can't get away with that, right? So I try not to take myself so seriously, and really just try to carry a message of depth and weight. So that's my story, guys. I hope somebody was able to get something out of that. Thanks, Sean.
My name is Jonathan. So, hey, let's thank Blake one more time. All right, passing the basket in support of the 7th tradition, and we offer chips to mark our time in the program, and I've asked Jonathan to offer them tonight.
My name's Jonathan, I'm an alcoholic. Here in the Sand Hills, and we got a chip system. First we offer the white chip, surrender chip. All right, we come back to that one. 30 days, 1 month. All right. That's Chris, everybody. Anybody else? 30 days. All right. 3 months, 90 days. All right. Congratulations. That's Brian, everybody. Anybody else 90? Got 6 months. I got 6. 9 months. All right. That's Chris, everybody. Anybody else for none? 1 whole year. 2 to 83. Always come back to the white one.
All right.
Madeline? That's Madeline, everybody. Anybody else for the white chip? All right, clap for the chips, yo.
We held a raffle on Saturday nights. The money from this raffle is used for activities this group supports throughout the year. And Jeremy will pick the winning number. If you have the winning number, please see Jeremy after the Lord's Prayer to get the AA book of your choice.
The last 4, 2176. All right.
Good job. All right, we hope you have enjoyed the meeting tonight. And Blake, thank you again. Please bring your cups and trash to the kitchen after the Lord's Prayer. Next week's speaker is going to be Chad A. and the 12th tradition reminder. In closing, let us all be reminded of our 12th tradition, which states anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles before personalities. I have the right to say I am an alcoholic and that I attended this meeting, but I do not have the right to say you are an alcoholic or that I saw you here. What you have seen and heard here is a trust. Leave it here. The doors of AA are always open. Those who enter are free to leave. Those who leave are free to re-enter. Those who stay sober.
Yes, sir.
All right, let's have a moment of silence for the still sick and suffering alcoholic inside and outside the rooms, followed by the Lord's Prayer, our prayer of your choice in silence. Whose Father?
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Keep coming back, it works, it's working.
You have a,